I never imagined a cleaning lady's inspiring transformation could leave us all in tears. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The sun peeked through the old windows of that massive building where I worked, but it felt like darkness was wrapped around my heart. I stood there, trembling, staring at the floor, a sticky, uninviting mess. My fingers shook as I clutched the broom, like it was my lifeline. I had been scrubbing, day after day, surrounded by beautiful people living lives I could only dream of. Margaret, the cleaning lady, had her own battles. I'd often seen her silently glide through the hallways with her worn-out mop, her face a canvas of exhaustion. Yet, there was something magical about her. She hummed softly to herself, a haunting melody that lingered in the air long after she passed by. It was as if she brought the scent of hope with her, even when my own spirit was caving in. But on this particular day, I sensed something was different. When she entered the break room, a hush fell. The light dimmed, shadows dancing on the walls like hesitant whispers. I watched as she took a deep breath, her tired body visibly shaking. Then, she looked straight at us, her eyes bright with an intense fire. "I have a story to tell," she said. My heart raced. What could a cleaning lady possibly say that mattered? I caught the eye of my colleague Sarah. She shrugged, her expression a mix of disbelief and curiosity. The whispers around the room shifted to silence. I felt an electric charge coursing through me, anticipation pulsing with each heartbeat. Margaret's voice trembled at first, but grew stronger with each word. She spoke of dreams shadowed by reality, a childhood lost in the rubble of circumstance, aspirations buried deep under the weight of despair. Tears glistened in her eyes, and mine felt heavier, clenching my throat. I realized that behind her smile lay a world of pain, sacrifice, and endurance. But then came the twist. As the words slipped from her lips, it became clear she wasn't just a cleaning lady. She carried secrets. Dark secrets that made the air heavy with tension. She mentioned something about a chance to escape, an opportunity that stirred the curious murmurs among us. What was she really talking about? The room felt like it was closing in. I looked around. Faces filled with confusion and intrigue met me. My stomach twisted. Margaret had something to say, something that would change everything. But would we be ready for the truth? Then she paused, her gaze sweeping the room like an eagle searching for its prey, and I could feel the electricity in the air. "One of you will help me," she declared, her voice firm yet vulnerable. She scanned the room again, and in that moment, I felt the weight of 1,000 unspoken words suffocating me. Was she looking at me? My heart pounded violently in my chest. This was it. What was she asking? I held my breath, caught in the web of emotions swirling around us. This cleaning lady, with her sweeping gestures and heartfelt revelations, was about to change the course of our lives. But at what cost? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The stillness in the room hung like a heavy curtain, muffling the cacophony of my racing thoughts. As I absorbed Margaret's words, the air crackled with an urgency I hadn't felt before. My coworkers glanced at one another, their eyes wide, mirroring my own bewilderment. What did she need from us? Who? I whispered, the tremor in my voice betraying the calm demeanor I hoped to project. The question hovered in the air, laden with the weight of apprehension and anticipation. Margaret took a step forward, her hands trembling slightly as they fidgeted with the edge of her apron. Each of you carries a piece of this puzzle. I need someone to take a leap of faith. And in that moment, a crack of uncertainty festered between us. Sarah scoffed, her skepticism tearing through the haunting ambience. And why should we trust you? She challenged, crossing her arms defensively. It was as if Margaret's very being shone with a light we all somehow feared to embrace. Margaret's face tightened. Because every soul in this room yearns for something more. I know what it feels like to be buried under layers of hopelessness, working endlessly without a glimmer of gratitude or recognition. But I stand here, asking for help. We can change our stories together. Another colleague, Tom, leaned against the counter, his expression shifting from mockery to contemplation. He wore a mask of casual indifference, but there was a flicker of intrigue dancing in his eyes. What exactly are you proposing? His words cut the tension, sparking a glimmer of collective focus on Margaret. She took a deep breath, her voice steadied by the palpable determination that swept through her. I have an opportunity to relocate, to start fresh, but I need funds for an application and a few necessities to get my feet back on solid ground. In return, I will guide you, show you, how to break free from the confines of your own lives. Something in her voice transcended the walls of our reality, seeping into our hearts like warm honey drizzling over cold ice. I felt it, a warmth that stoked the embers of hope hidden within me. Could we really help each other? But just as the faint notion of camaraderie began to glimmer, the room erupted into chaotic noise. Chattering voices clashed as we debated Margaret's proposition. Excitement battled skepticism, and where there were promising threads of connection, doubts soon wove a tapestry of fear. I stepped back, feeling lost in the whirlwind of discussions. I turned towards the kitchen window, catching the sunbeams breaking through the clouds above. It was then that I remembered the journals I used to keep, the pages filled with dreams of traveling far and wide. An ache in my chest echoed those unfulfilled aspirations. It was a desire to venture into a world beyond this sterile office, a desire that I had buried beneath the weight of obligation. Look, I finally spoke, my voice cutting through the chaos, surprising even myself. If we can help Margaret, we can help ourselves too. We can step outside of these walls, hell, outside of our comfort zones. The room grew quiet as eyes turned towards me, some curious, others skeptical. But something shifted in the air, an unspoken agreement tying us together. Margaret's eyes lit up, her weary spirit bolstered by the potential flickering around us. You all have the power to change not only your lives, but the lives of those around you. It starts with kindness, vulnerability, and a willingness to rise together. As her words washed over us, I felt a surge of courage, although the uncertainty still gnawed at the corners of my heart. Could I really commit to this journey? Was this the moment where everything would alter the course of my life? Just then, Sarah broke the silence, her arms still crossed but her expression softer. Okay, I'll bite. But what is in it for us? Why should we care about your journey? At her words, I felt Margaret's optimism dim slightly, her determination shaking under the question. But instead of faltering, she tightened her grip on the edges of her apron, wiping away a loose thread. With every step I take towards my dreams, I'll be stronger. And I intend to share that strength with all of you. As her courage poured from her, something in me shifted. The past and present collided, illuminating the path ahead. But before anyone could pick up the thread of hope hanging in the air, an unexpected crash echoed from the hallway. My breath hitched in my throat, and collective gasps filled the room as we turned towards the source. There, standing in the doorway, was a figure we all recognized, my boss, Mr. Jenkins, his expression dark and furious. It felt like all hope drained away. He took one step inside, his eyes narrowed, and I couldn't shake the dreadful fear that had just entered with him. What is going on here? His voice, sharp and accusatory, sent a jolt of panic through me. I braced myself for the fallout, caught between courage and the crushing reality of an impending storm. The tension coiled tighter as Mr. Jenkins stepped further into the room, the weight of his presence crushing the fragile bonds we had only just begun to forge. You are all supposed to be working, not concocting some foolish plan. His gaze darted from one face to another, lingering on Margaret, who stood resolute yet visibly shaken. "Sir, we were just," I stuttered, my voice trembling as fear overwhelmed the spark of hope I had previously felt. "Just what? Wasting time? Planning another failure?" he interrupted, his demeanor an ice grip squeezing out any warmth left in the room. "This is exactly what is wrong with this team. You think you can just dream your way out of your responsibilities?" His words cut through my resolve like a knife, and I felt the fire of bravery falter under the weight of his derision. The others shifted uncomfortably, their earlier interest in Margaret's transformation quickly evaporating under this cloud of hostility. But then, just as despair threatened to drown us all, Margaret stepped forward. She was a fragile figure standing against a storm, her courage glowing like an ember in a dark void. "Mr. Jenkins," her voice was steady, though it wavered with twinges of emotion, "we deserve more than to be mere cogs in your machine. We are not just employees. We are human beings with aspirations. Please, let us have a chance to explore them." For a moment, there was silence and acknowledgement, if only brief, of her plea. The strength emanating from her was contagious, and I felt a flicker of defiance rise within me. I was not alone. "Margaret is right," I echoed, my voice gaining steadiness as the feeling spread through the room. "We are trapped in a cycle, and we want to break free. We want to help one another, even if you don't see that value in us." Mr. Jenkins' brow furrowed, and for a chilling instant, I thought he might explode, but then something shifted. The rage simmered into a cold, calculating stare, and I couldn't tell if he was having a moment of clarity or preparing to lash out even harder. "You think I would want any part of your folly?" He spat at us, scoffing as he turned. "Find your dreams, but don't expect me to babysit you. This is a job. It's not a sanctuary for your fantasies." With those words, he walked out, the door slamming shut behind him like a final curtain on our fragile hopes. As the silence stretched into a breathless void, we exchanged glances laden with uncertainty and shared vulnerability. I could sense the collective disappointment settling on our shoulders like a shroud. Gradually, the electric tension drained from my body, and I felt my earlier spark dimming. "Why do we let him get to us?" I murmured, mostly to myself. Sarah sighed, lowering her arms. "Because he is right in a way. We are trapped." She looked at each of us, her resolve cracking slightly. "But are we willing to be trapped forever?" "I refuse to believe that," Margaret said quietly, but her voice trembled. I could see her fighting to maintain her resolve in the wake of despair. The fire in her eyes flickered nervously, but I could also see something else, her fierce belief in the possibility of change. "We have each other. Maybe it's time we show Mr. Jenkins that we can rise despite his words." Tom, who had been quiet until now, took a step closer to Margaret. "I'm in. If you can push against that wall, then I will too. It's about time we have our own voices heard, and not just his." A few murmurs of agreement rippled through the group, reminding me of the embers of hope still smoldering amidst the ashes. "Perhaps we need a plan," I suggested, my heart thumping more firmly. "Not just to help Margaret, but to uplift ourselves. We can band together and highlight our collective strengths instead of letting our dreams wither away." As they nodded, I felt the energy shifting once more, each face reflecting a flicker of hope. But just as we began to breathe life back into our ambitious ideas, the phone rang. It cut through our discussion like a bolt of lightning. I hesitantly reached for it, the anticipation crackling in the air. "Hello?" I answered, feeling a sense of dread fill the pit of my stomach. The voice on the other end was a stranger, professional yet frantic. "Is this the workplace of Margaret Callahan?" "Yes, but she is here with me," I stuttered, glancing around at the expectant faces of my coworkers. "Urgent matters require her immediate attention. The NYC Arts Collective needs her for an interview today. If she doesn't appear within the hour, she may lose her chance." My heart plummeted, and as everyone's eyes fixed on me, I could feel the pulse of panic spreading through the room. This was an opportunity, a lifeline dangled just as we were learning to rise above ourselves, but would Margaret even consider it after our confrontation with Jenkins? Would she take the leap of faith that she always spoke of, for herself, and leave the hopes of our newfound connection behind? As the uncertainty loomed heavy, I took a deep breath. We were still bound together in this struggle, regardless of what happened next. Margaret's eyes met mine, wide with the gravity of the news, and I could only wonder if this moment would unravel all we had just built, or if it would lead us even further down the road we dared to tread. The air felt thicker now, a mix of fear and anticipation, and all I could focus on was Margaret's expression, a conflation of joy and trepidation. The news was a grenade tossed into our fragile gathering, and we all held our breath, teetering on the edge of something monumental. "An interview?" she whispered, as if the word itself held the power to either uplift or decimate. "But what about everything we just discussed?" Her voice trembled, and the intensity of it wrapped around our hearts, pulling us closer together yet threatening to pull her away. "It's what you dreamed of, Margaret," I found myself urging, though my heart stung with the weight of our collective aspirations. "You can't ignore that." Everyone's gaze turned to her, a shared desperation flickering in the room. The flicker of hope that ignited in our last moments seemed to hover on the brink, just waiting for a catalyst. "But what if I leave?" Margaret shook her head slowly, her hands wrapped tightly around each other, yet her spirit was fighting with every ounce of strength. "I don't want to abandon this just for a chance that might fall through. What if I'm not good enough? What if this isn't the right time?" Tom stepped forward, his voice steady amidst the uncertainty. "Margaret, you fought for this very moment. You have a chance to make your voice heard, and others are counting on you too. What you find in there could inspire all of us." As the words came out, they seemed to ignite something within her. A fire flickered in her eyes, and I sensed her fear wrestle with excitement. "I wanted this," she admitted, her voice wavering. "But how can I take that leap when it feels like we've just found our footing?" In the heart of that moment, I heard Sarah softly say, "We will always be here for you, no matter what happens." Our journey isn't defined by a single step. It's shaped by our paths together. There was a tenderness in her voice that encapsulated the bond we forged through shared struggles. It was as if Sarah's words bridged the chasm between ambition and doubt. Margaret offered a small nod, but I could see that she was still torn, each possibility tugging at the edges of her heart. "Maybe this is an opportunity, not just for you," I interjected, searching for anything to rally her spirit. "What if stepping into the light could show us all how to break free from what Jenkins has tied us to? If you can shine, maybe we can all find our way to bright futures." The urgency in the stranger's voice from the call echoed in my head, urging Margaret to make a choice. "You have 60 minutes, Margaret," I whispered, desperation straining my words. "You need to decide now." The seconds ticked by like hours, and I could see her mind racing. Then, as if in slow motion, she took a deep breath, her shoulders rising and falling like a tide retreating. "Will you all be there for me?" I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently as I felt the urgency lift momentarily. "Always! But you need to take this chance. It's your time to shine." With that, something shifted in the room, a collective consent wrapping around Margaret like a warm embrace. She looked into each of our eyes, absorbing our shared determination, our belief in each other, and then she straightened her spine, a newfound resolve taking hold. "Yes," she finally said, her voice firm and glimmering with hope. "I'll go." As the words tumbled out, I felt the air shift, fear transforming into a whirlwind of anticipation and pride swirling through the group. Margaret's decision was a spark, igniting the kindling of our shared dreams, but it also left another uncertainty rocking in its wake. Margaret gathered her things quickly, excitement surging as she moved with purpose. Yet, as she turned to make her exit, a sudden clattering came from the back of the office, the noise of the supply closet door swinging open. Our heads snapped in unison, and there stood Mr. Jenkins, having very openly returned to overhear the exchange, nostrils flaring like a beast ready to charge. The color drained from Margaret's face, the exhilaration collapsing into an icy dread as his icy gaze fixed on her. "Where do you think you're going, Callahan? You think this is the path to escape? You're mistaken." His cold tone sliced through the moment like a knife. I felt the world spiral around me, caught between hope and fear as Margaret met his gaze. Would this be an opportunity for her to defy him, or would he find a way to snuff out her newfound spark? The clock was ticking, and I sensed that whatever confrontation was about to unfold would push us deeper into the emotional chasm we were all desperately trying to avoid. My heart raced not just for Margaret, but for all of us. We might be standing on the precipice of everything we had sought together, or face a devastating choice we never anticipated. The tension in the room was palpable, a coiled spring ready to snap as Jenkins' presence loomed over us like a dark cloud. I watched as Margaret, still holding on to a fragile thread of courage, faced the very man who had kept her, who had kept all of us imprisoned in fear for so long. "Do you really think you can just walk out of here?" he sneered, stepping forward, the shadows dancing ominously around him. His suit, meticulously tailored, felt out of place amidst our raw, hopeful energy, a reminder of the barriers we had spent so long trying to dismantle. "Mr. Jenkins," Margaret hesitated, the resolve that had almost lit her up dimming under his relentless gaze. "Margaret, don't you dare give in to him," I blurted out, the words slipping from my mouth before I could catch them. Everyone turned to me, wide-eyed. Even Jenkins paused, his expression a mix of surprise and condescension. "Look around you, Callahan. This is your reality," he spat, gesturing dismissively to the office. "This pathetic little dream of escaping, of making something of yourself? It's not how the world works. It's time to accept your place." Bitterness and anger flared within me. How could one man contain such power over all our lives? But even as the feeling surged like a tide, I found myself drawn back to an innocent memory of laughter shared over lunch breaks, the glimmers of hope that had sometimes floated to the surface amidst our shared struggle. "Margaret," I said more softly, my voice trembling with the weight of the moment, "remember why you wanted this. Remember the dreams that brought us together. You're not just doing this for yourself, you're doing it for all of us." I was painfully aware of how vulnerable that declaration made all of us feel, yet I pressed on. "You have something powerful inside of you, a voice that deserves to be heard." Jenkins recoiled slightly, as if my words had actually struck him, then raised an eyebrow in mock amusement. "Ah, how noble," he scoffed. "But remember, Callahan, dreams don't pay the bills. And they certainly don't build careers. You're risking everything for what? A fleeting opportunity?" "I'd rather risk everything than live in a cage," Margaret declared, her voice gaining strength with each syllable. For a moment, the fire of her conviction glowed brightly, igniting sparks around the room, reminders of all the whispers of encouragement shared in hushed tones. I never imagined that even a cleaning lady's transformation could echo with such raw power. Yet Jenkins' laughter was cold and cutting. "Brave words. But I'm afraid it won't matter. Do you really think I'd let you simply walk out? I have plans for you, and they don't involve taking the shortcut to failure." A shiver crept down my spine. The possibility of what he might do gnawed at me. I exchanged glances with Sarah, Tom, and the others voices of support and love caught in the undertow of uncertainty. People like you can't change the world. They can only stain it, Jenkins continued, glancing at each of us as if sizing up the threat we posed. And trust me, I wouldn't allow that to happen. As Jenkins stepped closer, Margaret stood her ground, no longer a timid flame, but a wildfire in her own right. I may be a cleaning lady, but I'm more than that. My worth and my dreams are not defined by you, and neither are my friendships. You don't own my spirit. In that moment, her words hung in the air like an incantation, a remarkable declaration that cast a brief glow over the dark, oppressive weight in the room. It was as if everyone could feel her fighting not just for herself, but for everyone who found themselves beneath Jenkins' steely grip. But just as I thought hope might hold sway, Jenkins' expression shifted, a cruel smile stretching across his lips that made my stomach twist. You'd be wise to tread carefully, my dear. There are consequences for insubordination. Maybe not now, but I have all the time in the world to make you regret this decision. Margaret faltered, her bravado cracking just slightly under the weight of his threat. We'll see how this plays out, she said, uncertainty seeping back into her voice. Behind her, Tom shifted forward. You'll see us in our corner, no matter what, he declared. Resoluteness spread across his features, but his bravery only seemed to aggravate Jenkins further. Ah, the band of misfits, Jenkins said with a touch of disdain. How quaint. However, you are fast approaching a precipice that you may never recover from. Just as I thought the drama could not tighten further, a pounding on the office door interrupted this tense confrontation. It burst open, and we collectively turned to see Clara, our colleague from HR, looking wild-eyed and breathless. What is going on here? She gasped, the words spilling from her mouth like a rush of water into a parched land. Jenkins straightened abruptly, fixing his mask of control back on. Nothing that concerns you, Clara. But you'd best. Margaret deserves to be heard, Clara interrupted, emboldened somehow by the swirl of tension. The world needs to hear her story. You can't silence her. And just like that, the dam began to break. Around the room, whispers of support began to rise, a ripple that spread like wildfire as more voices joined. You can't treat us like this. You don't own our lives. The defiance, once only in the base of Margaret's spirit, now surged through all of us, coalescing into a burgeoning movement against the oppression we endured. Yet, as the chorus grew, I could see Jenkins' face hardening, the shadows deepening in his eyes. He unleashed a piercing laugh, but the edge of fear threaded through it. You think you can change anything? Not here, not today. And just when I thought we might breach that barrier of despair, he leaned in, his voice a chilling whisper just below the growing noise. But mark my words, if you pursue this, if you take the job, there will be consequences. More than you can imagine. The panic that cemented in my stomach was harder to shake. As the swelling tide of defiance fluttered around me, I felt the ground shift beneath our feet, a newly forged bond, a camaraderie steeped in courage and risk. But all of it hung precariously, balancing on the knife edge of Jenkins' looming threat. Whatever hope had emerged would not be without a heavy price. As we stood united in that moment, I realized we were not alive in a fairy tale. We were on the cusp of a battle where hearts could be shattered, yet intertwined with the hopes of a shared future that was anything but guaranteed. And as Margaret's eyes searched each of ours, I could only wonder, would we find the strength to face whatever came next, or were we merely inviting chaos into our lives beyond what we ever anticipated? The day began like any other, the hum of life echoing through the halls that had become so familiar. Yet the undercurrents of tension from yesterday's confrontation seeped into every corner, like a bruise on the soul of our workplace. I could feel it in the heavy air as I stepped inside, an unspoken weight pressing down on our collective spirit. Margaret was in the break room when I arrived, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of coffee, the steam rising gently, almost as if comforting her fragile heart. I approached cautiously, taking a seat across from her. "How are you holding up?" I asked, the concern in my voice unable to mask the vulnerability I felt within myself. She looked up, her deep-set eyes mirroring a tumult of emotions. "I'm trying to stay strong, but part of me feels like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to leap without knowing what's below." Her voice quavered, and I could sense the lingering fear from Jenkins' threats still festering inside her. "You're not alone, Margaret," I promised, reaching over to take her hand. "We're all in this together. I won't let you face this on your own." It was a promise that echoed the undercurrents of hope flooding through our small group, a hope that felt tenuous yet electric. Just then, Clara entered, a determined look etched across her face. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice rising above the gentle noise of the coffee machine. "We should document everything. If Jenkins thinks he can intimidate us into silence, we need to prove him wrong." Tom, leaning casually against the counter, raised an eyebrow. "You mean, gather our experiences? Our struggles?" "That could work," he said slowly, the spark of idea igniting a flame among us. Margaret's gaze brightened at the thought, a flicker of fire igniting within her again. "Yes. If we can compile our stories, showcase our talents, and what we truly bring to the table, it might just expose the truth of what we're facing." The thrill of possibility began to weave itself into our hearts. As if sensing the urgency of our motivation, others drifted into the break room, drawn by the energy that began to envelop us like a cocoon. They rallied around the idea, providing suggestions on how best to express our experiences, sharing how they had been touched by Jenkins' cruelty too. The resistance, once a whisper, began to resonate as a collective roar. But amidst the sudden surge of camaraderie, the pit of dread still gnawed at my heart, tethering my hopes and fears together. Was this mere optimism, or a dangerous gamble? Jenkins was a shark, and we were swimming in his waters. Later that afternoon, as we gathered around a table piled with notes and ideas for our project, I noticed a flickering light in Margaret's eyes. Her spirit was bending but not breaking. It was as though she had found a purpose beyond the debilitating fear, making her fragile frame seem larger than life. Yet just as the conversation became lively, the sharp trill of a phone cut through the laughter. Jenkins' name flashed across my screen, sending a collective hush over the room. My heart raced. I hesitated before swiping to answer, the weight of what lay on the other end knocking loudly against my chest. "Callahan," Jenkins' velvety voice greeted me. "I trust you're keeping your nose out of trouble." The insincerity dripped from every word, exacerbating the unease in the air. "I'm concerned about this latest initiative of yours, and your little band of rebels. Wouldn't he want anything unfortunate to happen?" I felt the world tilt on its axis, the blood rushing loudly in my ears. "We're just looking to share our stories, Mr. Jenkins." "Is that what you call it?" he replied, amused yet dangerous, like a cat playing with a mouse. "Consider this your final warning. Cross me again, and you'll find that those dreams you're clinging to will vanish faster than you can imagine. The fallout won't just be yours. It could affect your precious friends, too." The line went dead before I could respond. The room had grown painfully quiet as my hands trembled around the phone, each word he had spoken embedding itself like a knife into my heart. I felt the weight of dread settle in, an anchor pulling me deeper into despair. "Callahan?" Margaret's voice was small, filled with concern as she reached for my arm. "What did he say? You look like you've seen a ghost." "He threatened us." "He knows about the project," I murmured, the uncertainty crushing my spirit. "Then we push harder," Clara said fiercely, her resolve ignited despite the residual chill of Jenkins' threat. "We can't let him win. This is about more than just us. It's about every single person silenced by his toxic reign." Hope flickered faintly again amidst the fear, though I couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that the confrontation we had with Jenkins would be just the beginning of something far more perilous. As we began to gather our thoughts once more, I wondered whose stories would be first to take shape. Would we find solace in our collective strength, or were we merely beckoning a storm that could tear us apart? That night, as I lay awake, I couldn't shake off the feeling that our words, our stories could be our salvation, or they could steel him further against us. I closed my eyes, longing for a fleeting comfort, but each thought of Jenkins' warning clawed at my insides, anchoring the reality that hope comes with risks heavy enough to crush dreams. And just as I thought I had wrapped my mind around it all, a text message pinged on my phone from an unknown number, a chilling request buried beneath layers of uncertainty. Leave now, while you still can. Jenkins is not done with you yet. The sun cast a timid glow through my bedroom window the next morning, as if the day itself hesitated to reveal the chaos brewing within the hours ahead. The weight of anxiety clung to me, suffocating even the most glimmering rays of hope. I glanced at the screen again, the ominous message still glaring back at me. It felt like a taunting reminder that no matter how tightly we held onto our dreams, shadows loomed ominously close. I arrived at the office early, seeking solace in the silence, but finding only the echo of my own thoughts. The heartbreak felt palpable as I stared at the footprints of my colleagues' faint imprints of joy, resilience, now overshadowed by the looming threat of Jenkins. Yet, even amidst the disarray, an itch of determination began to take root within me. Yesterday, we had decided to fight, to reclaim our stories from the tight grip of fear that had held us captive for far too long. I busied myself with preparing the conference room for our gathering, placing chairs in a circle to symbolize our solidarity. As the others trickled in, each newcomer unknowingly brought a sliver of warmth, a spark igniting something we all desperately needed, an ember of belonging, of shared courage. Margaret entered last, her weary face illuminated by a fragile smile. I couldn't sleep, she confessed, her voice steadying as she took a seat beside me. Too many thoughts swirling around, like a storm ready to break. Me too, I admitted. But we have each other, remember? I squeezed her hand, hoping my grip conveyed the promise that went beyond mere words. Together, we could become a beacon of change. Clara took the lead, her voice ringing with determination. We've gathered our stories and experiences, but I think it's time we hear from everyone. Each of us has faced the dark side of Jenkins' reign. We need to create a tapestry of our words, not just individual threads. Nods of agreement rippled through the group, a moment of solidarity that ignited the room. We spent hours crafting our narratives. Some shared their pain with trembling voices, while others conjured memories of strength buried beneath layers of hurt. With every tale told, the energy shifted. The horrific grip of anxiety that had once penetrated the air began to loosen ever so slightly, replaced by the electrifying pulse of resilience. Then, just as laughter began to surface, mingling with tears of catharsis, the door swung open. Tom put on a brave, casual mask as Jenkins strutted in, his presence silencing the life we had briefly cultivated. I glanced at Margaret. The brightness in her eyes dissipated in an instant, replaced by the familiar glint of fear. "Ah, the little collection of dreamers," Jenkins sneered, his voice a smooth dagger cutting through the camaraderie. "I see you're busy weaving fantasies. What charming tales have you concocted without my express permission?" "Just sharing our stories, Mr. Jenkins," I replied, hoping my composure concealed the raging storm within me. "We're standing together. Isn't that sweet?" The glimmer of malice in his eyes was evident. "But you should know, standing together only makes it easier for me to take you all down at once." He turned towards Tom, his voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "And you, Tom, I've always enjoyed your particular talents. Please tell me you aren't caught up in this nonsense. You know better than to take sides against the tide." Tom's brow furrowed, a personal battle flickering across his features. Suddenly, the atmosphere turned stifling. Jenkins was not merely engaging. He was feeding on our discomfort, honed to extract the very essence of our collective strength. "Get out," Clara shot back, her bravery pulsing like a raw nerve. "This is ours, not yours. We're not afraid of you." Jenkins' smile curled into something sinister, and he took a step forward, eyes narrowing. "You think you're empowered by these little stories? I'll tell you what fear tastes like. You have until the end of the week. If I don't receive a satisfactory silence from you all, I'll make it my mission to see your lives dismantled one story at a time." The threat echoed in the room like a deafening drum, and he sauntered out as quickly as he came, a devilish smile lodged on his face. I watched as the lightness we had cultivated deflated, overtaken by an unbearable sense of dread. "What do we do now?" Margaret's voice trembled, a whisper barely breaking free from the encroaching silence. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again, a merciless reminder of our fraught reality. I glanced down to see another message, and my stomach lurched. "You need to leave. It's not just you Jenkins is coming for. Your lives are at stake." Panic unfurled like a vine around my heart, and I looked around the circle at my friends, realizing in that moment that we were all bound together, the stakes higher than ever. We hadn't merely ignited a fight for our stories. We had awakened a battle that threatened our very lives. I swallowed hard, feeling the lump grow in my throat. Was it too late to step back now? We had opened a door I could only fear would lead us into the darkest corners of Jenkins' wrath. Margaret placed her hand on mine, squeezing tightly. "We can't let fear dictate our actions. We have to fight together." But the words felt painfully inadequate in the face of looming despair. I could only nod, searching for strength within the depths of her unwavering gaze. The weight of our choice pressed heavy against my chest, and as the once invigorating fire dwindled, I realized that standing united meant diving deeper into the abyss, a risk that left an uncertain fate dangling before us. And all I could think was, could hope transform into survival, or were we merely diving into the depths, completely unprepared for the storm that was brewing beneath? The days that followed Jenkins' chilling threat became an agonizing blur, each moment steeped in anxiety and anticipation. We convened daily, crafting our narratives into a shared testament of resilience, yet we felt the weight of our actions pressing down relentlessly, a reminder that the clock was ticking, and each tick echoed Jenkins' menacing words. I found myself replaying that encounter with Jenkins, desperately searching for a chink in his armor. He'd blindsided us all with his charisma, using it as a weapon to instill fear. Every time I caught Margaret's eye, a wave of uncertainty washed over me. We had committed to this fight, but with each sleepless night and scattered thought, doubt seeped in like an unwanted intruder. By Thursday, the air was thick with tension. We had decided to meet at a local cafe, where the comforting aroma of coffee and baked goods provided a deceptive sense of normalcy. As I approached, I found Clara already seated, staring out the window, lost in contemplation. Her pen scratched furiously against a napkin, as if the urgency of her thoughts demanded release. "Do you think we're fooling ourselves?" she said suddenly, her gaze not leaving the street. "What if this just gives Jenkins the ammunition he needs?" I sat across from her, my heart heavy. "I don't know, Clara. But if we don't stand up for ourselves, what is left? I can't shake the feeling that he knows us better than we know ourselves. Maybe this is all a part of his game." But there, in her vulnerability, I found a flicker of resolve. "Then we need to outsmart the game. We have each other. We have our stories." "Yes, but stories can be spun into weapons, too," she whispered, her voice trembling. Just then, Margaret rushed in, her breaths quick and shallow. "You wouldn't believe what just happened," she explained, her eyes wide with excitement and fear. "What is it?" Clara and I spoke in unison, both leaning in, desperate for a shred of hope. "A cleaning lady, Maria, you know her? Heard us talking about Jenkins the other day while we were at the office. She saw how tense we were and approached me cautiously. "What did she say?" I asked, feeling a cautious thrill surge through me. "She told me about the time Jenkins came down hard on her when she tried to voice her concerns. He threatened her job. But instead of breaking, she took a stand just like we are now." Clara's eyes lit up. She chose to stand up for herself, even when it was terrifying. "Exactly." And she shared a story with me about how she once confronted one of Jenkins' more loyal underlings and managed to put a dent in their confidence. She said sometimes, it's not about being the loudest voice, but rather that one truth that pierces through the fear. With that, our energy shifted. Margaret pulled out her notebook. "We need to include Maria in our plans. The more stories we have, the stronger we'll be." Throughout the afternoon, as we discussed and plotted, hope flickered like fireflies on a summer night, illuminating our shadows. The chatter of the other cafe patrons faded, and for the first time in days, I could see a path emerging, one that we could carve together. But as I glimpsed this brighter horizon, the phone call shattered the moment. It was Tom, his voice strained and urgent. "You need to come to the office. Now. I don't feel safe. Jenkins is here." The color drained from my face. "What do you mean he is there?" "He has been lurking around, intimidating people. I swear someone just followed me down the hallway." My pulse quickened as I caught sight of Margaret's face. "We need to go," I said, my voice steady despite the tempest gathering within. As we burst into the hallway, the expansion of hope collided with a surge of dread. By the time we arrived at the office, the lights flickered as if sensing the tension in the air. Tom stood at the entrance, his face pale and grim. Behind him, I could see Jenkins standing near the conference room, arms crossed, a deathly smile spreading across his face. "Ah, the brave warriors arrive," he mused, leaning casually against the wall. "I see you've gathered your little army. But remember, the taste of fear is sweeter than victory." As he stepped toward us, that familiar paralyzing dread wrapped around my throat. But we had come too far to turn back now. In that moment, a knot of resolve solidified within me, nudging me forward. "Let your fear become your strength," I whispered, urging my friends onward, facing the man who had tormented our lives for far too long. And as I glanced back at my friends, at the weary but defiant faces of Margaret, Clara, and Tom, everything changed. We weren't just fighting for ourselves anymore. We were fighting for each other, drawing strength from the stories we shared. Let us show Jenkins that our stories won't be silenced. Together, we are stronger. But as our voices rose in solidarity, Jenkins took a step closer, the sinister gleam in his eyes reminding us that our unity may have set us on a path toward conflict we could never have prepared for. And within that defining moment, as the words left my lips, I feared we were diving deeper into the very abyss we sought to escape from. The clash of our words hung in the air, thick and charged, a tremor in the fabric of our gathering. Jenkins' laughter cut through the tension, cool and condescending. "Such fervor, my brave little rebels. But passion doesn't shield you from the consequences. You should know that better than anyone." I felt my heart race as I clenched my fists, the weight of his gaze heavy upon me. "What do you want from us, Jenkins?" I demanded, forcing my voice to steady against the rising tide of panic. "We're standing up for what is right. You can't intimidate us any longer." His smirk widened, and with a casual wave of his hand, he gestured towards the conference room. "Oh, but I can certainly make your lives miserable. And don't forget, it's just a matter of time before your little crusade sends ripples into dangerous waters. What about your jobs? Your livelihoods?" Margaret's breath hitched beside me. I could feel the weight of despair beginning to settle on our shoulders again. No one in that room could deny the validity of his threat. The very essence of our rebellion was at stake. "We'd rather fight for our rights than live in fear," Clara interjected, her voice firm but laced with uncertainty. Jenkins straightened, suddenly serious. Noble, but foolish. You think you're prepared? I can turn any of you into an example. You've seen my power. Don't test it. You might just find your own stories, the ones you cling to for hope, twisted against you. With that, he turned sharply, melting back into the shadows of the office, leaving us in a hushed void, a haunting echo that pressed against our sanity. Shit, Tom muttered, running a hand through his hair. This isn't good. We need to get out of here, regroup, and think. But before we could act further, an unexpected voice broke through the palpable silence. Maybe we don't need to run. It was Maria, the cleaning lady, who had somehow slipped in unnoticed, broom in hand, her usually unassuming demeanor rock-steady. You all should know what has happened before. It doesn't have to wait for you to leave this place. Maria, you shouldn't be here, I said, my heart racing. This is dangerous. She raised her hand to silence me, determination sparking in her eyes. No, it's important. I overheard more than you think. He has been using tactics to divide us, spreading lies, forging alliances with those he believes hold power over others. What do you mean? Clara asked, her brow furrowed in confusion. He means to break you apart, to make you paranoid, Maria explained. He spins stories. He knows the vulnerable spots of your hearts. The more you trust each other, the more he'll try to make you doubt. Tom shook his head. We've already come too far. We can't let him turn us against one another. That's exactly what he wants, Maria pressed on, her voice steady. You must stay united, and if any of you falter, you will each crumble. Draw strength from each other. Don't let him pry you apart. When I confronted him about my job, I stood with the fear of losing everything, but I found freedom in my truth. That's what you need. In that moment, surrounded by the uncertainty of our future, we understood the depth of her conviction. We need to gather more stories, more voices, I said, inspiration flooding my heart. Not just ours, but from everyone who has been wronged. Together we could build a fortress of truth. Yes, Margaret nodded, her resolve reigniting. For every lie he spins, we'll find a truth to counter it. Just as hope began to expand once more, a muffled shout broke the air. There was a commotion at the entrance, shuffling feet and raised voices. My chest tightened as I instinctively glanced toward the door. Jenkins had sent someone to corner us. Get out! A voice barked, and as a figure pushed through the crowd, my stomach dropped. It was one of Jenkins' men, a familiar face from the shadows of the office, the man who had once nodded knowingly at Jenkins' orders. He strode forward, shoving aside office equipment to reach us. They want to teach you a lesson, he snarled. And it's come to the point of no return. You will regret ever thinking of defiance. As he advanced, my heart raced, and instinct kicked in. The flicker of hope we had just ignited threatened to be snuffed out. But Maria stepped beside me, standing steadfast, reminding us of our purpose. Together, she whispered, and the others stepped closer, drawing strength from each other as presence. The man lunged, and in the chaotic moment, everything spiraled. One thought echoed in my mind. This was just the beginning. We were stepping into a darkness where stories and truth would collide, and I feared that when the dust settled, the outcome would be more devastating than we could fathom. But amidst the fear, the unity held, and I couldn't shake the feeling that, somewhere buried deep within our struggle, a light awaited us, a resolution that could either liberate or shatter our fragile spirits. The air was thick with anticipation, as our small group of rebels faced the looming darkness, the moment draining everything else from existence. That man Jenkins' enforcer stood between us and the dreams we had so fervently begun to weave. I hadn't thought fear could electrify the atmosphere like this, but it buzzed with tension, a sharp thrum of uncertainty reverberating through every heart. Yet, as I glanced at my friends beside me, Margaret's unwavering courage shimmering in her eyes, Clara's determined jaw set like granite, and Tom's fists clenched, Ready to fight back, I discovered a surge of defiance blossoming within me. Regardless of what Jenkins had thrown our way, we were still here, united, and that alone held power. Together, I yelled, despite the gravity of the situation weighing down on every syllable. We won't let fear dictate our story any longer. Surprisingly, the shout unleashed a wave of energy that surged through the room. A collective might stirred within our group, a harmony of hope and determination lighting a way through the shadows. The man's smirk faltered for just a moment, a glimmer of uncertainty flashing across his face. And just like that, the door swung open wide behind him, loud and forceful, revealing Maria's fellow cleaning staff pouring in, a ragtag army of gritty resilience standing at the entryway, ready to support their own. "I overheard you," Maria said, her voice rising above the din. "And you're not alone. Stand if you want change." The cleaning staff, emboldened by her words, stepped forward in solidarity, their expressions alight with newfound purpose. It felt as if the very walls of complacency shook with their courage, pushing back against the tsunami of fear Jenkins had tried to cast upon us. As they stepped over the threshold, I realized the power hidden behind this small act of unity. These were voices that had long been silenced, and in returning to our side, they were reclaiming their stories too. The engulfing darkness that once threatened to consume us now faced a beacon of resistance. It was as if the stories we all had carried were becoming a river, flowing fiercely, gathering momentum as it rushed forward to shape a new landscape. "Enough," the enforcer spat through gritted teeth, recovering from the disruption, but by then it was too late. "You think numbers make you strong?" He laughed, but beneath the bravado, his demeanor seemed a touch less sure. "We are stronger together," Margaret replied resolutely, stepping to the forefront. "If gathering our truths makes us a threat, then we shall be a threat to every lie you built to hold power." A ripple of agreement surged through those gathered, and a chorus of voices began to rise around us, murmurs of tales, of ambitions long forgotten, fears and dreams shared, in whispers now erupting into a symphony of resilience. From amidst the crowd emerged another familiar face, Elena, who had been with us from the very beginning but had receded under the weight of Jenkins' reign. Her eyes gleamed with fierce determination. "Jenkins can't control us if we embrace our fears, if we take back our stories." The building tension bled into the air surrounding us, a potent energy forming a protective barrier around our united front. The enforcer took a hesitant step backwards, glancing for reinforcements, but it was too late. The ground beneath him was already shifting. In a flurry of raw emotions, I lifted my hand. "Let us tell our stories together, the truth of who we are in our own voices. No more hiding." And with that, the first voices broke through hesitantly, becoming louder and louder, weaving a tapestry of solidarity that filled the office space. Fingers began to point. Accusations loomed over a lifetime of suppression. Every whispered aspiration, every buried dream came pouring forth, flooding the room with the scent of our untamed desires. Jenkins' enforcer's expression began to shift from intimidation to alarm, as this spontaneous uprising created a palpable force, pressing against him, forcing him closer to the truth behind our stories, a truth that he loathed nearly as much as we had feared sharing it. The wave of emotion rose, filling every crack and crevice of fear with defiance, becoming something unstoppable, like a vast storm stretching toward the horizon, urging us to leap into the light. Just as the momentum reached its peak, the office door burst open again, and in walked Jenkins, his presence like an ominous shadow threatening to engulf everything we had built. But instead of yanking back into the shadows, we welcomed him into our light, voices swelling in chorus. "Fear can't reach us if we own our truth," Margaret shouted, and we echoed her fervor, our combined strength ringing in the air. For a moment, I thought we might drown in the tide of his fury, but as the crescendo of our truths rose higher, he faltered, his overconfidence dimming under the weight of a collective awareness. Then it happened like a crack in the worst of storms. Jenkins stuttered. His expression shifted from irritation to incredulity. The facade of power he wore crumbled like dust blown in the wind. I could almost sense him click back into defense mode, but there wasn't enough left in him to reclaim the hold he had once had over us. Though in slow motion, Margaret, Clara, Tom, and I stepped forward, joining hands amid the burst of chaos, leading the way for everyone to cluster together, strengthened by the realization that this was not only our battle but a confrontation of all those who felt muffled beneath his reign. And in that terrifyingly vulnerable moment, something monumental shifted within me, a realization that we weren't just resisting the fear that had once paralyzed us, rewritten by unity, transformed into a force powerful enough to light the darkness. With a voice that shook and reverberated like a sonorous drum, I shouted, "We reclaim our stories. We reclaim our strength." As if the universe itself sighed in relief, echoing each word, we took the leap together. Jenkins staggered backward, glancing in disbelief at each of us, our resolve unyielding, vibrant with newfound courage. He may have thought he ruled by fear, but here, in our sanctuary, we forged something far more potent, a community of defiance, ready to embrace whatever repercussions followed. When the dust settled, there was no longer space for silence, no longer space for fear. We were now the tide rolling forward, and nothing, certainly not Jenkins, could hope to hold us back. And that final resolve surged forward. All it took to ignite that spark had been the act of stepping beyond fear, lighting a flame that would never extinguish no matter how dark the path ahead looked. "Fear reminds us we're alive," I whispered as we breathlessly held each other, eyes glistening with tears of relief, frustration, and elation. "And we will rise." As the final echoes of our voices reverberated around the office walls, I realized we had created something worth fighting for, a new, passionate chapter awaiting just beyond. Not solely for ourselves, but for all those who had remained silenced, bending but never breaking beneath the weight of others. In that moment, standing atop the precipice of fear, I understood we were not merely cleaning ladies and office workers fighting against a tyrant. We were warriors of our own stories, ready to redefine our futures, armed with the power of authenticity and resilience. Because after all, together, we could light up even the darkest corners of despair. And maybe, just maybe, we could illuminate the path for others too, the weight of our shared journeys transforming the quicksand into fertile ground for dreams long concealed.